Welcome. You're joining us for a deep dive, and you're probably here because you want the essential knowledge, right? Without getting bogged down in all the fluff.
Mhm.
Today, we're tackling something pretty fascinating: virtual reality in higher education.
Yeah, we've got this recent report, Teaching and Learning with Virtual Reality. It's from spring 2024, a collaboration between VictoryXR and Baton Global.
And for you listening, what makes this deep dive really valuable, I think, is that we're going straight to the people involved.
Exactly. The professor's actually using VR in class, and the students learning with it.
So our mission really is to boil down all that feedback, give you a clear picture of how VR is actually impacting universities.
Yep. We're digging into insights from 24 professors
Okay.
across 19 different universities,
Mm.
and they're teaching all sorts of things, business, natural sciences, a real mix.
Plus the student side.
Oh, yeah. Perspectives from over 150 students.
Right. And you mentioned something kind of jumped out right away.
It really did. Just how positive the responses were. Like, overwhelmingly positive from both the instructors and the students.
Interesting.
We're talking some pretty surprising stats on effectiveness, how much they want to use it going forward.
Okay. Okay, let's unpack this then. See what it all means. Where should we start?
Let's start with the instructors. A sense to see where they were coming from, right? Their initial thoughts.
Yeah, expectations.
So, these 24 professors, diverse backgrounds, as I said, when they thought about how often they'd use VR, well, it wasn't just a one-off for most.
No.
No. About 36% planned on using it like 2 to 4 times over the semester.
Okay, few sessions.
And another third, 33%, were aiming higher, like 5 to 10 times.
So a pretty regular feature for that group.
Exactly. It shows they were thinking of it as a real tool, not just a gimmick.
And were they new to this? Or had some done it before?
Good question. About 22%, so nearly a quarter, had actually used VR to teach the same course previously.
Ah, so they had some baseline.
Right. And maybe even more telling, over half, 56%, used VR personally, like outside the classroom.
Okay, so a decent level of familiarity for many of them. They weren't total newbies.
Not necessarily, no, which probably helped.
And what about why they wanted to use it initially? Did the report say?
It mentioned themes emerged about how they planned to use it, but didn't detail specific examples right at the start. You can kind of guess, though, right?
Yeah, probably visualizing complex stuff, maybe making things more hands-on.
Things like that. Tackling tricky concepts, making abstract ideas more concrete, stuff that pops up later in the surveys anyway.
And how they define success would have varied too, I imagine.
Absolutely. Depends on the course, the specific goals they had for that VR session.
Okay, so that sets the stage. What happened once the semester got going? Did they, follow through?
Well, that's where the learning event surveys come in. This gives us a snapshot of VR in action.
Right.
15 professors filled these out, reporting on 41 different VR applications.
41 unique uses.
Yeah, and that covered over 350 student learning experiences in total.
Okay. And the big takeaway from those surveys?
Consistency, like remarkable consistency. Every single one of those instructors agreed that the students were engaged during the VR activities. Unanimously.
Unanimously engaged. That's a strong statement.
It really is. And maybe even stronger. Every single one also said they'd use VR again for that same material.
Wow. Okay, so definite buy-in after actually using it.
Huge buy-in. It speaks volumes about the perceived impact.
Did they get specific about what kinds of learning they were targeting with VR?
They did. And the list is pretty comprehensive. It wasn't just one thing.
Like what?
Okay, get ready. Making complex decisions, data analysis, teamwork, presenting, leadership skills.
Okay, so higher level skills.
Yeah, but also foundational stuff. Operational or procedural knowledge, recalling facts, vocabulary, memorization, spatial organization, sequencing, even reading and listening comprehension.
That's a really broad range. They were really exploring its potential, weren't they?
Absolutely. Across different types of learning, different skills. It wasn't just, say, science visualization.
Right. Okay, super interesting from the instructor side. Let's switch gears. What about the students? End of semester feedback.
Yep. Crucial piece, obviously. How did the learners feel? And they got a really good response rate here.
How many?
157 students replied out of about 500 who were invited.
Right.
So pretty solid feedback.
Definitely enough to get a sense of things. What stood out from their perspective?
Well, one interesting, maybe predictable point was their VR use outside of class.
Ah, yeah, the generational thing you mentioned.
Exactly. The younger students, 17 to 28, used it most often recreationally. About 14% used it weekly.
Okay. And older students?
Students over 41 reported 0 non-academic use.
0. Wow. Okay, so a real difference in baseline familiarity there.
Which might play into how they perceive it educationally,
Could do. But focusing on the course itself, the VR learning experience, what was the general feeling?
Overwhelmingly favorable.
Yeah.
That's the term the report uses repeatedly.
Okay. Favorable in terms of enjoyment or?
Both, really. But the report stresses their positive views on its utility for learning, its desirability as a tool. It wasn't just fun.
Got it. They felt it actually helped them learn.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting, connecting back to what the instructors planned, the frequency of use.
Ah, right. Does using it more often make a difference in student perception?
It seems to, big time.
How so?
Okay, so students whose professors use VR more often, that 5 to 10 times group,
Yeah.
0.95% of them agreed VR enriched their learning.
95%. Okay.
Compare that to 81% for the group who only used it 2 to 4 times. Still high, but a noticeable gap.
Yeah, 14 points. That's significant.
And the gap was even wider for the statement, VR had a positive impact on my learning.
Okay.
It was 89% agreement for the high-frequency group versus only 60% for the lower-frequency group.
60%. Wow, that's a huge jump from 60 to 89.
Right, almost 30 points. It really suggests that dipping your toe in with VR might not be enough for students to really feel the learning benefit.
That makes intuitive sense, actually. Like, you need that repetition, that integration for it to move beyond novelty and become a real learning tool.
Precisely. It needs to be woven in, not just sprinkled on top.
Did the students give any, written feedback? Qualitative stuff?
They did. Open-ended responses, and the report pulls out some key themes that give more color to why they felt the way they did.
Okay, let's hear those. What were the main themes?
Engagement and interest was a big one. Showed up in 8 out of 49 themed comments.
Makes sense.
And there's a great quote here. The immersion experience helped me retain the course information and made my experience more meaningful than a traditional course.
Meaningful. Retention. That's powerful. Captures attention, makes it stick.
Exactly. Then another theme, mentioned 5 times, was about the future. Future of VR, the job market.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Students sought a skill building. One said, as our world continues to evolve with technology, it is always good to get ahead of the game and learn how to navigate VR prior to it becoming widely known.
So they saw direct career relevance in just learning the tech. That's an added bonus.
Definitely. Then also mentioned 8 times was the maturity of the technology.
What does that mean? Good or bad?
More nuanced, really. It wasn't negative, more forward-looking. Like this quote, I would like to explore the learning opportunities in the future when the technology is more developed.
Ah, so they liked it now, but they could see it getting even better. Potential yet untapped.
Right. Realistic. And reflecting the positive vibe, another theme, also 8 mentions, was simply desired more.
They wanted more VR.
Yep. Simple quote. I enjoy using VR in the course, and I would like to take more classes in the future involving VR. Can't get much clearer than that.
No, that's a pretty direct endorsement. Any other themes?
One more mention, just 3 times, but important. Learning styles and differences.
Acknowledging it might not be for everyone.
Exactly. One student said, some students may love VR and learn better with it, and every student should choose for themselves. A good reminder, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even with strong positive trends, individual learning preferences matter. VR is likely a powerful part of the mix, not the whole solution.
Well put. Okay, so that's the student view. Should we circle back to the instructors for their final thoughts, end of semester reflections?
Yeah, let's get their final take. Did their views change much?
We have insights from 7 professors here, either surveys or interviews. And mirroring the students, the overall tone was overwhelmingly positive.
Still positive at the end. Good.
Very positive. And here's a critical point. All 7 felt VR had a positive impact on student learning.
7. Okay.
And maybe more importantly,
Right.
they felt it enabled learning outcomes that were basically unattainable otherwise. Things they just couldn't do with traditional methods.
That's huge. It's not just better, it's different, unlocking new possibilities.
Exactly. It underscores that unique value. And remember those initial expectations.
Yeah. Did reality match up?
For most, yes. 6 out of the 7 said their expectations were either met or exceeded. 3 met, 3 exceeded.
Okay, so mostly hitting the mark or better. What about the one whose weren't met? Was it the VR itself?
No, interestingly, that professor linked it to issues with delivering the course asynchronously. It wasn't a criticism of the VR technology itself, more the course format.
Gotcha. So even the slight outlier wasn't really down on VR's potential.
Correct. And like the students, these instructors had some common themes in their final feedback.
What were they seeing?
4 main things kept coming up. 1, higher student engagement saw it consistently. 2, high student satisfaction. They could tell the students valued it. 3, preparing students for the future, that workforce readiness idea again.
Right, connecting to that student theme.
And 4, the learning benefits that come specifically from immersion, that feeling of being there.
Okay. So engagement, satisfaction, future skills, and unique immersive learning. Pretty consistent picture from both sides then.
They are inconsistent.
All right, let's try and pull this all together. What are the main conclusions, the big takeaways from this whole study?
Okay, so the research asked, basically, how does VR influence teaching? How do learning outcomes compare? And how did perceptions change over time?
Right.
On the first point, how it influences teaching, it seems to push instructors towards creating these really immersive, engaging experiences, things beyond the norm. Some even noted it helped keep students focused, especially in remote settings.
Interesting. And comparing learning outcomes.
The perception, strongly, from both groups, is that it enhances learning, makes it better, more engaging, and allows for unique kinds of understanding. That engagement factor seems key.
And perceptions over time, did instructors get jaded?
Quite the opposite. Their initial optimism was generally confirmed, often even exceeded once they saw it in action. Their hopes mostly played out.
Okay, so let's hit those key stats again, the big numbers.
Right. For instructors, 96% call their VR use successful.
96? Wow.
98% found it effective as a teaching tool. 100% plan to use it again.
100%.
Yep. All believed it positively impacted learning and enabled unique outcomes. And 86% had expectations met or exceeded. Pretty compelling.
Very compelling. And the student numbers?
Also strong. 89% agreed VR enriched their learning. 78% felt it positively impacted learning. 62% wished they'd used it more.
They wanted more.
And 71% would take more courses using VR in the future. And again, that crucial finding, higher frequency use led to even stronger positive responses.
Okay, these numbers really paint a picture, don't they? So what are the practical, actionable takeaways here for universities, for educators thinking about this?
The study points to a few key things. First, consistency matters. Aiming for 5+ uses seems to be the sweet spot for students really perceiving the benefits. Don't just dabble.
Right, go beyond the novelty stage.
Second, younger students' existing familiarity with VR seems to translate into them seeing its educational value more readily.
That makes sense. They speak the language already.
Kind of. But and this is important, the positive views were overwhelming across the board, regardless of age, prior non-academic use, or subject matter.
So it works broadly, even
Yeah.
if younger students are slightly quicker adopters.
Seems so. And that desire for more VR came from both students and teachers. Professors were often motivated by wanting to give students future-ready skills.
So the bottom line recommendation from this report is,
Universities should be proactive. Look seriously at adopting and integrating VR. It's not just a flash in the pan. The data suggests real potential for enhancing learning and engagement.
a strategic investment, not just a tech toy.
Exactly. Given the feedback, especially that link between consistent use and perceived benefit, it looks like a worthwhile direction.
Okay, so for everyone listening, the core insight from this deep dive seems pretty clear. VR is looking like a really positive and crucially engaging tool in higher education. It's getting strong endorsements from the people actually using it, teachers and learners, especially when it's used consistently and thoughtfully.
And that aha moment, maybe, is really that connection between frequency using it regularly and how much students feel they're learning and how happy they are with it.
Yeah, just trying it once or twice might not cut it. You need that integration.
Seems that way. Regular embedded use seems to unlock the real impact.
So here's something to chew on as we wrap up. If this is what we're seeing now, what does the future of learning look like as VR tech gets even better, even more widespread, cheaper?
Right.
How might this reshape not just university courses, but maybe your own learning, your professional development down the line?
It really feels like we're just scratching the surface, doesn't it?
It does. Lots to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.